Hello and welcome to the Roundup here inside the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, located 1801 North Lincoln Boulevard, just steps away from the state capitol, and this beautiful building which is open. You can come and visit anytime, but this building is funded by Hunting and Fishing License Permit, and then we have a great announcement coming up here in a little bit as a benefit concert from a big-time country music singer will help benefit this conservation here. Well, a little bit more on that, but first let's get to our three legislators in Logan County. They are Garry Mize, District 31, John Pfeiffer, District 38, and Chuck Hall of District 20. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Last time we were all together was for the 89er Day Parade, and what a fantastic day that was.
It was a good day. Nice weather.
It was such nice weather. I mean, compared to last year, when we were just trenching in the rain, I mean, this was beautiful.
It was awesome in Guthrie. I'm understanding Perry has a big deal the following week after that?
Not the following week. No, we have the Cherokee Strip celebration,
okay,
which celebrates the Cherokee Strip land run, but that's in September.
September, okay.
Yes. So come on down and tape that show.
Yeah, someone lied to me then. Well, legislature, we haven't met in about a month, but last week was deadline week where the Senate hears the House bills and the House hears the Senate bills. Some of the highlights to you guys of last week of what we saw. Garry,
everybody started once. Well, I would say, I feel like the session as a whole has been a good one. There hasn't been too many disagreements yet. There's still time. But working out the negotiations on the budget, schools, teacher pay, all of those things, I think that we're in a good spot to move the state forward.
We're kind of getting those specifics a little bit, but
yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's with the deadline being what it was, you saw a lot of companion bills matching up with each other, and so at least for where I was over in the Senate, these were a lot of measures and legislation that we had seen before that started in the Senate. These are all bills, of course, that started in the House, and they kind of match up. And for those that match up a little too closely, we'll see them head to conference soon. And we'll work out, some of the details, see some of the changes that have been made, amendments in the other house, and we'll bring those together through some sort of conference committee.
What a difference a year makes.
It's an amazing what a difference a year makes. Everybody's still, it's April, everybody's starting to get on each other's nerves because we've been in this building together for way too long, but still cordial, still working together, still compromising, still moving the state forward. I think the Senate sent the House about 410 bills, Senate bills over. We got through about 2/3 of those. The House sent 390 roughly over to the Senate, and about the same numbers. So we really have been able to keep the trains running on time. Everything's making it through.
Well, there's many things toward the end here as we get to the stretch, but the top one kind of hearing a little bit is criminal reform and education with the teacher pay and a bunch of the stuff, kind of what some log roll, kind of type bill. There's different bills out there. Where are we at on education? I'll let you go first, Chuck.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So thank you so much. As I'm flanked by my two House members, right? Education funding. So it's no secret that the House sent us over a $1,200 teacher pay raise. Senate leadership and our Senate caucus would like to see as much as possible go directly into the formula. It's our plan or our thought that the more local control that we can give, the better off we'd be. I think in talking and sitting in on our caucus, when we go home and we're talking to superintendents and we're talking to teachers in town hall sessions and eggs and issues talks, they're really getting those class sizes down seems to be important. I know that, and I'll let the House members talk about it. I know the $1,200 teacher pay raise was something that was important to the House. We're really kind of getting into a period that I'm looking forward to. I mean, this is budget time. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see a lot of things tied to the budget negotiations. Certainly a $1,200 teacher pay raise is a big ticket item. But it's my understanding that we're close. that the actual number that both the House and the Senate are planning on putting forward towards education is almost there. I mean, we're just there. It's just a matter of how it's going to be spent, whether it be directly into the teacher pay raise or more or less into the formula.
And John, you're on the Appropriation Budgets Committee there. Where's the hang up? We know Governor Stitt wants it. He wants the top 10 education. The House sent over 1,200. Where it sounds like, and all the teachers want it. The momentum's for it all there. Where's the delay? Where's the hang up?
I do think it's just a minor disagreement because the total budget number for what we want to put into education, I think the House and the Senate can both agree on. It's how we actually spend some of those dollars. The governor and the House want to give a $1,200 teacher pay raise. The Senate wants to take all that money and put it directly into the funding formula. Both plans really do make a lot of sense, and it just really kind of depends, a matter of weighing out the differences right now where we can kind of reach a compromise. I do want to point out that $1,200 teacher pay raise, which is roughly $70 million, is not all the additional money we're going to put into the funding formula. And I think that's something that has kind of got a little confusing. It's, okay, you get a teacher pay raise or you get money into the funding formula, and that's just simply not true. On one of the deals on the teacher pay raise that I think sometimes that we overlook, we gave a $6,000 teacher pay raise last year on average. An additional, one of the benefits, besides doing something that we should have done years before, is that it kept veteran teachers in the classroom while they allowed their raise to vest in their pension so they can get a better retirement plan. One of the things that I've talked to superintendents about, and they say the same thing that they're telling the Senate, we want money to put it directly into the classroom, and I get that. But we have a teacher shortage, and nobody can deny that. And we lose a handful to Texas and surrounding states. The vast majority of teachers we lose are to retirement. And if we give a $1,200 teacher pay raise, and it backs them up another year, so they stay in the classroom, veteran teachers stay in the classroom another year, and buys us another year to try to get more teachers into the pipeline that we have to replace them with, I think that's money well spent. And I get the addressing classroom size and things like that, but if you don't have the workforce available to decrease classroom size, then it's kind of a moot point. And so it's really a cordial conversation, and it's more just the money we have that we're putting into education, where's our best use and what's going to best serve the students of the state of Oklahoma at this point.
And Gary, I'll let you put your 2 cents on that as well. But without diving into the jargon that you guys get into, but when I hear formula, I feel like it just kind of gets lost, and it's going to. No one knows percentages. Superintendents lose sleep over formula. It sounds like going directly to teachers, sounds like a good idea, but maybe the formula works, but it just sounds like it kind of gets lost, maybe.
Well, the formula could be argued as a black hole. If you've ever sat through any discussion about it, it's pretty complex. But yeah. I don't think that at all. That if you put money in the formula, it gets lost. Yeah. I think ultimately what's important to remember or realize is that in both chambers there is an interest in moving public education forward, funding the classrooms, making sure that we're paying teachers an appropriate or competitive amount. There are a number of members that care about public education. I would argue that probably all of them, but I don't want to speak for everybody. But yeah, I mean, they spoke about a couple of different issues in regards to education, what we're trying to do, but there's 149 people in there that have a say-so that have been elected to office, and so, you know, I don't know how it is at your house, but my wife and I don't agree on everything, so getting 150 people to agree, it's not going to happen. But I believe that there will be a positive outcome. There will be more money for public education and some reforms tied to that as well.
Now, are these discussions, is something like the leadership talks like in February, March, because when it gets to April, May, this is going to happen, or because we've seen both houses, both sides talk about, and then the governor signed it within an hour. Is that something that just simply can't happen because of the amount of dollars, you know, the difference in opinion?
No, well, in my opinion, I mean, it could happen faster. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the last moment.
Right.
But these are these kind of tough decisions are used in budget negotiations. We've seen the 5-day, 4-day school week tied to the $1,200 teacher pay raise, which some question whether those two are germane to each other. And so we would want to look into that. What I would tell you is that, and your viewers are smart and they're involved in the process. We need to hear from them. We need to hear from those teachers. We need to hear from those administrators. We need to know what's important to them. I think it'll go a long way when we're sitting down talking to our counterparts of being able to match up what exactly we are hearing at the home and at these meetings. I think it'd be very helpful.
And it's just leaps and bounds better where we were a month ago, a year and a month ago.
Yeah.
We're in such a better place. I mean, yes, there's going to be differences of opinion on how to best help education, which is an amazing place to be as somebody who's been in for a while, when the conversations used to be, okay, how much, to balance a budget, what kind of cuts can we handle? What can we trim back? And we're actually in a part, it's fun to disagree on how to best help and best serve the students. Yeah. And it took a lot of hard work and a lot of time to get to this point, but we're finally really moving the bar forward. And I think that's, I mean, little disagreements on, okay, is classroom funding better, teacher funding better? I think what we don't want to lose is about a year ago where we were at, which was how are we going to keep our education system from cratering completely? And we made some tough decisions. We moved the ball, and now we're in this position to where we can actually have honest discussions on what's best for education. And I think that's huge.
And I want to get to the 5-day school week thing here in a minute, but while we're talking about money and education, higher education, there's talks about next year getting a lot more money. Of course, they've had cuts over the last several years, but they're looking at for some more dollars as well. Is higher education come before or after this talk, you think? Will the education money for schools happen before higher education?
Well, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but this will be out of ignorance for sure, because this is my first go round.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is that's kind of all a simultaneous package. I mean, it's all presented together. They're different bills, the higher education and common education or public ed, but it'll all be at the same time or in the same time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Higher ed is going to get there's some growth. They're going to see some growth in their budget. One thing that I really like that we're going to see that mirrors up kind of K through 12 and higher ed is the concurrent enrollment funding is going to be increased. So the talks that I hear is that's going to be 100% funded this year, which is going to be really a great thing. For both those that are in the 12th grade planning on going to college and get some extra credit and working there, enrolling early into college. I think it's wonderful.
Common education, that was the word I was trying to think of. I couldn't come up with it in a second. Thank you. Back to the 5-day school week, and I saw you had a few things, Oklahoma City Media that I read, John, about 5-day school week, and we talked about this last time as well. Is there 4-day school week, but you have to meet this, or this? But kind of any happenings in the last month on 5-day school week?
We passed the bill the Senate sent over, Senate Bill 441. Passed. We made some changes. We made some. Besides the teacher pay raise, we added to it. There was also some more changes. We made it clear that the House and the Senate would have to approve the Department of Education rules, and we passed back the enacting date for local schools another year, simply because it was going to take a year for the Department of Ed to clarify their rules. They wouldn't have, by the time we got around to approving them, the schools would already have set their calendar, and so by defect, everybody would be pushed to a 165-day calendar. I do think that throughout this whole process, it's gotten mischaracterized a little bit. It did originally start out in the Senate as a 4-day, 5-day school week bill. What all this bill did, Senate Bill 441, was to put in place if you're going to do 1,080 hours, you have to go to school at least a minimum of 165 days, which includes the 2 parent-teacher conference days and the 5 professional days. So you're looking at 158 instructional days. And a brief little bit of background, from 1975 until 2008, we had a 180-day school year across the state, which we did 180 days because 180 days is half a year. It's what most everybody does. In the 2008-2009 school year, we had a bad ice storm, and they switched and let people go to the 1,080-hour option. What they didn't think at the time is that we would eventually see schools that were going and cut down their instructional days to as little as like 138 days. And so when we're looking at schools that are going less than 2/3 of a year, that becomes troubling. It becomes troubling for their academic standings. It becomes troubling because a lot of times these schools are the place where these kids find stability, get meals, things like that. And so this would just put a minimum of 165 days, technically 158 days of instructional days. And so one of the schools in my district, Crescent, is on a 4-day calendar. They would have to add some days. They would have to add 1 instructional day if this became law. Whereas I have other schools in my district which are 5-day weeks that are on like a 150-day calendar. So to say, well, it's 4 day, 5 days, that's not necessarily true. I mean, it's just kind of a minimum number of instructional days.
Roughly 200 schools are 4-day school weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, represented here today, I mean, we have districts that are 4 days, we have districts that are 5 days, and you can slice that up several different ways. I think what's important to remember is, or realize, that was in no way a mandate to 4 or 5. But with anything, I mean, as an athlete, which we were back in the day.
Washed up.
Yep, washed up. Anytime you wanted to get better at something, you spent more time doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's not a mandate to spend more time on task, but it was, I think, just like everything else, a negotiation and saying, hey, based on your school district and what's unique to your folks, your kiddos, let's figure this out. Let's put some framework and allow some flexibility. But ultimately, we hear a lot. It's about the kids. Well, that's about the outcomes too, and so we need to make sure that we're giving kids enough time, either more days or more hours in the day or less. Whatever. Just give some flexibility.
And there was some major changes, making sure that we approved the rules, making sure that they had time to adapt to it was a big change in between when the Senate saw it and when we saw it. When the Senate saw it, and we talked last time, and Senator Hall brought up a great point. He goes, we don't know what these rules are going to be, and they're going to have to do this calendar. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes back to the Senate and things like that. But there was some big structural changes on the reform itself after it came over from the Senate that in my mind made it a little better and a little easier to vote for, that as it was when it was presented on the Senate side, made things a little more difficult.
There's no doubt that there's probably some abuse going on with some of these schools, and they're going a lot fewer days. And just like to Gary's point, Representative Mize's point, the more that we can keep those kids in front of the teacher, the better off we are. But for several of my schools in the district that are 4-day, it's about teacher retention, teacher retention, teacher retention. And this gives these teachers, an opportunity, and frankly, families and children, an opportunity to do some things on a Friday or a Monday that they couldn't if they were in a 5-day deal. And what I'm seeing is that many of our schools, the 4 that are in my Senate district, are seeing great success from an educational outcome. In fact, we recognized, several on the floor just a couple of weeks ago, both 4-day schools. Yeah. That got statewide awards for their quality of education. So it's something that can work in some instances. And again to Representative Pfeiffer's point. Outcomes are important. There's no doubt about it. We need to be working for the benefit of the child. But there are situations, there are cases where it works very well. And I still renew my interest to maintain, give these schools an opportunity to maintain their 4-day if they can prove a cost savings and they can prove an educational standard that is staying up with everybody else.
Representative Pfeiffer, I know you have one thing, but is the Department of Education, are they leaning toward anything, or are they just kind of?
Yeah, so
they're investing on both sides.
Yeah, well, I mean, the State Department of Education very early on came out in favor of this agenda item to go with 5-day. And they were the ones that said that we'll sit down with superintendents, we'll sit down with teachers, we'll sit down with legislators, and with the legislature we'll write these rules and we'll promulgate them, and we'll make sure that everybody is on board. I have been told that several teachers several superintendents from 4-day school districts have been invited to the table to sit down and talk about rules that they can live with, and they're looking forward to that.
I think it's important, just to put a period at the end of that sentence, if you look at the process, because you hear a lot outside of the building, but what happened in that and a couple of other bills that were talked about quite a bit, is to see that the process does work, that there was negotiation, that there was change, whether it was taken up by the Senate or the House, it doesn't matter, but that I think the chambers were working together. We were willing to concede and make concession and negotiation to put what we felt like was the best package forward.
It's just a unique conversation because one fits perfect over here and one fits over here, and you're trying to make a decision for hundreds of schools, so it's a really tough deal. We'll see how that one. Okay, so we talked teacher pay raise, and we've talked 5-day school week, and from Logan County, we all know about the term I learned a few years ago, log rolling. In fact, it was passed on the floor, and it's a law about log rolling, all that stuff. So is it log rolling and why is a 5-day school week, 4-day school week, and teacher pay raise in the same bill?
No. Well,
no?
In my mind, no. And it becomes a little hard sometimes to judge what the courts are going to do. In the Constitution, it clearly spells out the legislature cannot determine the constitutionality of something. That is a job reserved strictly for the Supreme Court. Point in case, both of these dealt directly with education. A couple of years ago, former Senator, former Governor Warren put together a plan that included money for higher ed, career techs, common ed, with a tax increase, and about 5 other things. The Supreme Court ruled on it and ruled it was not log rolling, and that was the 2-cent tax plan that went on the ballot. It wasn't log rolling because it all pertained to education. And so we're talking about 2 things that are even in the same title of law, adjusting the minimum salary schedule and the minimum number of days. If a tax increase, which is in the tax code section, and an educational increase, which is in the minimum salary schedules, and about 4 or 5 other things, because career tech and higher ed are all in different sections of law, if all of that can be deemed an education package and not log rolling, I have a hard time seeing this, which is all in the same title of law, being deemed log rolling.
We had, like, on my notes here, I don't know if this is law, but we're going to talk about 5-day school week, and then we're going to talk about teacher pay raise, and then we're going to put them 2 together. It just, on my sheet of paper says that they don't go together, but maybe I just scribbled it a bit before we got here too. So
I would reiterate the sentiments of my colleague.
Of course you would. Of course you would. Of course you would.
That's so, put you in the middle. You're in the middle.
Can we play point counterpoint? Would that be all right?
That'd be good. That'd be good.
Hey, listen, I respect these guys, and listen, both of them were blessed to be in leadership roles over in the House,
yep.
and man, you got to respect that. I mean, the way Logan County is represented by 2 guys that are in leadership they should be very grateful. I'm not a big fan of the 2. I don't think they should be mutually exclusive. I just, I think that both of them ought to stand on their own merits. That's the way that I would have preferred it. I think that we're kind of getting into the silly season. Everything is everything is done and the cards are dealt and played. With some sort of end game. Some sort of end result that they're looking for, and they may not even be related to what we're actually after. I was telling Representative Mize before we began filming today, there are times that it feels like high school. honestly. I mean, it really does. And I'm way too old to be playing high school games. I think we were all sent up here to do, to do the work of the people and to get good legislation out that benefits, the citizens of Oklahoma, and particularly those living in the district. I respect the process. Everybody's playing by the same rules. I get that.
Yeah.
But I would just like to see them, be stripped out and held out on their own merits. That was the intention going into it. We would take a look at teacher pay. If it came directly over to us, they should be taking a look at 441 when it goes over them, and then we work out the issues. But no disrespect to the other opposite house. It's just that's the way I look at it. That's the way I'd like for it to go. Maybe I'm naive. I mean, look, I'm a freshman and I get it. And these kind of things are played, and they've been played since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to play the game.
Yeah.
I just don't have to like it.
That's well said. Okay, let's move on real quick, off education real quick. And criminal justice reform, all that good stuff. You hear that all the time, criminal justice. Just kind of talk a little bit what that really is. And a lot of people hear it on TV, they read it in paper, and I know it's a broad criminal justice reform, but just kind of your brief description of criminal justice reform.
Well, oddly enough, when you come in to this setting, some of the advice that I was given was pick a lane, and there are many lanes to choose from. But this was one that appealed to me for whatever reason. Probably because I'm a really nice guy.
There you go.
But I liked a couple of things about it. I like the idea of giving someone a second chance, but being smart about doing so. The reunification of a family, right? Mm-hmm. So we're allowing somebody back into society, but let's reintegrate them back into society, give them a chance. But from a private sector standpoint, and what I do. In that arena, I like the potential for cost savings. I mean, we spend a lot of money to incarcerate people. So with that said, I carried 2 priority bills as part of that task force, and there's a couple of them. One deals with sentence enhancements, one deals with giving a clear definition to certain crimes, and I've heard from a lot of folks about that, and again, it's one big negotiation. I think the conflict that we see, at least my assessment of it thus far, is you have a system set up to incarcerate that funds itself through fees and fines, and that seems to kind of fly in the face of this idea of punishing someone, and creating a system of accountability for, the bad things that you've done. But have you paid your dues, and have we helped you to rehab whatever the issue was, whether that's addiction or whatever, and then do you have an opportunity to go and sin no more, so to speak. So I like the idea. I think it's an area that we as a state have focused on for the last few years. There's been some strides made forward. You can see other states in the region or even in the country have made strides there. And I think from a polling perspective, I think people are starting to ask for it. But again, just like education or the budget, it's something that you have to get every person or party involved in that in the room willing to talk about it and negotiate and look at, hey, maybe we have not been doing this right in the past. And as an individual, that's hard to do. So as a collective body, certainly it's going to be hard to do. But you have to be willing to do that. And I think it's an area, if you look at incarceration on an annual basis, it's over $20,000 to keep someone locked up. Those 2 bills that I ran, I think if you look at it, and if we run them through, which may or may not happen, it affects over 3,000 beds. 3,000 beds times over $20,000. That's for a healthy inmate. It can go upwards of 50,000. That's a lot of money. So, can we save some money? Can we get it right? Can we get some folks back out with their family, reintegrate them back into society, make them taxpayers?
So I completely agree. I mean, I just think that we're locking up way too many nonviolent offenders. We need to have them back into the economy paying their taxes. This seems to have come with great bipartisan support. It's something we can all kind of get our arms around. Unlike Garry, this isn't exactly my lane, but it didn't stop me from dipping my toe in the waters of criminal justice reform. I ran an issue. A bill that dealt with felons being able to get professional licenses, certain professional licenses. I just have seen it many times where we have poor recidivism, or we have recidivism such as it is, simply because these folks get out and they can't get a job.
Yep.
And they've got sometimes they've got court costs and fines that they've got to pay for. They've got child care issues. They may or may have not have lost their spouse through divorce, and they're trying to put their life back together, and they need work. And so whatever we can do to let them know that there is hope, that look, you do your time, you made a mistake. We're going to allow you to get back to work so that you don't have to turn back to a life of crime, which would ultimately get you back in the system again, costing the state of Oklahoma.
Especially when you have the highest incarceration numbers around.
Right.
Yeah, and just doing that, and how do we change this system without jeopardizing public safety? And I think that's where the balance is kind of hard to strike. Because you're dealing with people on one side, the law enforcement community, the district attorneys and stuff like that, who see the bad side of everything. My wife's an assistant district attorney, and she never comes home and says, "You know what? I saw something great today.
Yeah.
This person turned their life around." She sees the people that have offended time and time and time again, and so that shapes your mindset in a certain way. So how do we address what is clearly a broken system? Without jeopardizing public safety, and trying to find that balance takes time. We've made some strides over the last 2 years. It's going to be a long-term project, and it's how some of it's just going to be clearly defining terms and things like that. Domestic abuse is classified under Oklahoma statute as a nonviolent crime. Ask any spouse who's been battered, that's probably not the case. So it starts with, and they have through their working groups and stuff like that. Okay, maybe we need better definitions. Maybe we don't need sentence enhancements for things that don't actually hurt anybody. I mean, and it's all part of that process. But trying to get buy-in from both sides is hard. I say this a lot. In Oklahoma, a lot of times we want things to get better, but we don't actually want to change anything. Mm-hmm. This is something we know we have to change. Change is hard. It's one of the hardest things in life. So getting people to buy in and say, okay, we have a problem is a huge first step. We've made that over the last 2 years. Okay, so we made these first steps. How do we continue to change and make things better?
Again, it's tricky because you talk about domestic abuse. Someone goes to jail, that would be enough of a lesson right there. I'm out. Hey, I'm never doing that. But then you have the repeat offenders. So
Right.
where's the line? And that's what makes it so interesting.
I think it's important to make sure that when you look at this, or anything, I'm looking through the lens of the way in which I was raised in my life, and my worldview, and my perspective. And so as a Christian man, I think it's important to put yourself out there and be willing to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
The reality is we probably were all raised very similarly, and so we made mistakes, but we had a very different support system and a very different background. So your punishment and then your correction was all held up by that support system. Well, there are individuals that are incarcerated and are in this system that don't have that support system. So you're looking at it from a very different lens, and it's the same thing. You have to consider all of those, but it goes back to when we were talking about education. You're not just talking about 4-day schools and teacher pay raise. You're talking about food insecurity. You're talking about that may be the only place that child has stability for the day. So there are a number of different pieces at work on each of these topics, and you're trying to make concession and arrangement and negotiation, and come up with law that addresses all of it. Throwing a blanket out there, and it's difficult to cover everybody up.
Especially when you have to cast that vote, because you just put all the pros and cons. This one outdoes this one. I mean, I imagine it's very tough. I mean, a lot of people in the public go, oh, they can gripe about legislature, but I can imagine those are tough votes, because you can see both sides of it. Now I got to make a decision in the middle of which one I think is the best route.
Yeah,
Right.
and you may be in the middle of really what your overall analysis process would be, but it's time to vote, and you have to make a decision based on the merit of what you've seen or heard so far, and most importantly, what Representative Pfeiffer said, what's in the best interest of public safety right now? Can we come back and revisit this issue, but is this in the best interest?
Then you can have those situations where you personally think that the best way for the state to go is one way, and your district, wants you to be completely the other way.
Exactly.
I mean, that really
Or your wife.
makes it difficult.
Yes.
That can make it difficult too.
Makes it very difficult.
Yeah, imagine. So, okay, running short on time. So, anything gun-wise, anything Medicaid-wise, cost of living, cost of living adjustment. My friends, my firefighters were getting all excited about a month ago. Now they're kind of down a little bit.
I think I'll take the cost of living one here. That way you don't have to dive into that.
Or Medicaid or ODOT.
Yeah, or I can speak up.
I'll take the Medicaid.
The cost of living adjustment that we passed. You really could go either way with that.
Yeah.
I had conversations. I got to vote on it twice because it came through my committee, and I think I said that last time. But from a fiduciary standpoint, you have to focus and pay attention to, what did we do to shore those up? And we are in the position that we're in now because of some work that was done before we got here, and some that Representative Pfeiffer went through. But also, it doesn't take into account the teacher pay raise that was given last year, potentially, extra money this year. You've got a lot of folks that are getting ready to retire from the numbers that I look at that are female. And that messes with the actuarial numbers. You can get really nerdy there, but you have to go into it very lightly. And I get it. I understand cost of living is going up, and healthcare and all of that stuff. But maybe we're going to address that too. That's come up here recently.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Medicaid expansion, we saw that the initiative petition came out. They'll be collecting their signatures. Don't know exactly how long it'll take for them to get their signatures, but I suspect that they will get them. The question then becomes, will the Oklahoma legislature be proactive or reactive? And I think that we've seen the issues that can be created as a result of 788. When a question doesn't cover everything that needs to be covered, and so we get to spend a year or two or three of fixing those issues that were left out by the initiative petition. So I don't know what exactly it will look like. I can tell you that we take. In fact, I heard our appropriations chair Roger Thompson giving a speech the other day where he said, we take millions and millions of dollars of federal money and we pat ourselves on the back and we say how great we are and we put up monuments to the wonderful things that we're doing. Then we have this issue. It's something that we're going to have to look at. It's something that all legislators are going to have to pay special attention to. I can tell you that I would like to see the legislature roll something out that we can all be amenable to, as opposed to doing it by initiative petition. So I think you'll see a lot of discussion about that. I don't know what will come of it this session. I know there's some talk that something may go through, but I'd like to see a real serious interim study. There's a lot of big money that's being placed on this initiative petition coming from all corners of the state of Oklahoma. But I just think that the legislature and working with our constituents really needs to sit down and figure out what the right approach is going forward.
Yeah, and I think it would be awful hard to see something happen on it this year. I mean, where we are out in the process, theoretically, if everybody could agree, we could roll out a JCAB bill. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is too big of an issue. I think it's got too many moving parts. And you're also dealing with an executive branch that hadn't been on the job that long. They're still trying to wrap their heads around all of the departments they're supposed to oversee and what their financial situation is, which is going to take a little bit of time. I do hope and think something could come out of it next year, or even, and I know this is going to sound bad, but it's not bad when used correctly. If there was a compromise reached, if there was a deal that everybody could agree on, I think we could see a special session, not like the special sessions we've seen back to the special sessions of old, where it's a 4-day special session like what they did with workers' comp. Okay, here's the deal, this is everybody agreed, it's planned out, it's agreed to, here's what we're doing. We're going to pass it, Senate's going to pass it, Governor's going to sign it, everybody goes home in less than a week. I think that's a possibility. What the likelihoods are on any of those, I don't know yet. It's going to kind of depend on a lot on where the executive branch is and how fast they can get through the numbers at the Healthcare Authority and the Health Department, which, as we all know, don't necessarily have the greatest set of numbers to work through.
Yeah.
And so that adds another degree of complexity onto an already very complex issue.
Back-to-back extraordinary sessions.
If it only lasted 4 days and we were able to fix
okay.
this problem and move the state forward, it would be fine. If we do it, and again, in terms of likely scenarios, special session is down there only if we get a deal reached, and it would be like when they did workers' comp, I think 4 or 5 years ago, in total of 4 days, and everybody goes home.
Mitch and Governor spent first 100 days. He just had that over last week, I think it was. You guys, House and Senate, came in with appointments with the executive, and we're starting to see some of those appointments coming in. Is a good feel so far with that?
It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why we waited so long to do it. I mean, the CEO ought to be able to, for the state of Oklahoma, ought to be able to put in the department heads and have the hiring and firing, authority. And of course, the legislature retained their right to remove. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. I think you'll see the state a lot better for what's happened in this session.
Final thoughts here. We wrap it up here. You guys, we're taping this end of April, 1st of May, or we might be at a session a few days early, a few weeks early. Days.
Days probably.
Days.
Days probably over weeks.
Yeah.
And we've. I don't think we'll be out. At one time, everybody was saying the 10th of May. I think that's probably a little unlikely at this point. I think it's probably the week of the 17th. The JCAB bills have to work their way through the process. Then the House and Senate, everybody has to pass them. And then you have to, what everybody kind of forgets is you can't pass a bill within the X many days, last days of session. So we have to be in there. We also have to be in, not that they would, just previous experience with a different governor, you have to be in long enough so if something happens and they don't sign it or they line item certain things, you have to be in to deal with that. I don't think that's going to happen this time. It's just, it's for the same reason we wear seatbelts. I don't plan on getting in an accident, but in case something bad happens, it's there.
I'm a little bit more optimistic. We are so close on the budget. I mean, we are just so close, and that's really going to be the deciding factor in my mind on how long we'll remain in session. I agree with John's numbers. It seems like the week of the 17th seems to be where everybody's looking to. They see that as the goal line, but we are just so close on these numbers, and I just. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and we'll make some decisions that'll get us out of there and back to the district where we all want to be.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, we're here at the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation here on Lincoln, not too far from the state capitol. And did you guys see the news today?
There was news today.
There was news today. It was really the good folks here. Well, Blake Shelton's put on a special concert in Tishomingo at his bar down there, and he's going to headline it on Friday. He's going to be there May 24th, but on May 23rd, Luke Bryant's going to be headlining it there, and all that benefits, $250 per ticket. All that money is going to go to the wildlife conservation. It's a fundraiser for the conservation folks here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I think we can top that, can't we? Don't we have kind of a country star coming into Guthrie here in about a week?
And I got a little bit of breaking news on that one.
Tell me about it.
Let's
interview you.
Here we go. Well, of course, the music never dies with Larry Gatlin, Vince Gill, Byron Berline. Well, the Troubadours,
Nice.
Turnpike Troubadours have
Oh,
been
perfect.
confirmed.
Nice.
Oh, good.
For May 7th.
That's the special guest that nobody wanted to talk
That's
about.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Exciting.
There was a contract deal that they worked it out, and there's 83 balcony seats right now available. I think those are probably be gone by the time we say goodbye today.
Yeah.
But where can we get those?
You can get those. You can talk to the Chamber, Guthrie Chamber. You can go on to Facebook. Music never dies. So
It'll be a great event.
good,
Yeah.
good
Looking forward
music
to it.
for good cause. But
We'll have several from the legislature there too.
It's pretty
yeah.
nice.
So congratulations, Wildlife Hunter. That's a good get. Blake Shelton, Luke Bryan.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Guys, always appreciate Garry Mize, Chuck Hall.
Thank you.
John Pfeiffer.
Thanks for
Appreciate you
having
as
us.
always. That's been the RoundUp. Glad you joined us here. My name's Chris Evans. We'll talk to you next time.